Hi, Analisa Six here to bring you the June 2023 astrology forecast for the sober curator and my personal blog, The Lady of Leisure. This is my third time trying to record this video, and so I hope that I'm a little bit more eloquent and better prepared. I don't write any kind of copy or script down because I just don't want to. Maybe I need to start utilizing AI for that of a teleprompter where AI is creating a opening script for me, because it's just something that's really awkward and hard for me to do. But I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to give you the June astrology forecast. I had kind of a milestone moment. It's May 27th right now, so it's not June yet, but I had kind of a milestone that I hit that's very significant for me, very insignificant in comparison to other people's platforms or YouTube channels. But thanks to you guys, I broke 100 subscribers, I should say, not followers, 100 subscribers in May, which was really exciting for me, having just a small kind of platform that I'm not really working hard to promote necessarily. Like, I do this as a labor of love and something that it kind of keeps my toes in astrology and keeps me up to date on what's going on. And I like to share that. I'm not working, so I don't have a job where I'm getting paid or anything like that. So the way that I kind of get positive reinforcement through this kind of avenue is just through people commenting or liking or subscribing. So I just appreciate all the support. It keeps me going and making sure that I stay consistent on doing these videos for you guys. So thank you for the support. It means a lot. I think that if you get to a certain amount, like 1,000 subscribers, you can monetize your platform, which would be cool because I'm having health issues. And so if there was a way that I could monetize doing horoscopes or, astrology reports, even if it was just a small amount, it would be awesome, because then I could kind of have some income while I work from home. So that's kind of a future potential goal for me, but I feel so late to the YouTube game that I feel kind of like it's too late now, but you never know. Hey, I'm just going to keep going with it, learn as I go and see what happens. I think that I'm not a huge fan of marketing or online promoting. I used to do a lot more of that, but I feel like they've made the algorithm just such a pain in the ass. And there's just the way that they like kind of shadow ban content, or the way that they make creators have to deal with paying for things. It just seems like a game I don't really want to play. So the fact that I'm kind of building a small platform organically without really, playing the game feels good. So thanks, you guys. Okay, so today's May 27th. We're currently out of the Mercury retrograde bubble. However, I personally have some stuff going on in my chart with Mercury that is still making me feel like I'm under the influence a little bit. So I think that's why I'm having a hard time today in terms of getting some computer stuff flowing, getting my words flowing. I just am ready for Mercury to move into Gemini. So let's go ahead and start with what is happening for us in the cosmos in June. I'm going to share my screen and show the chart for the date of June 1st, and then we're just going to kind of go through each week together here. Let me share my screen and get this chart up. I have it in whole signs. And so this is the date of June 1st. And so starting off June 1st, we have the Sun and Juno in the sign of Gemini. We're currently in Gemini season, so happy birthday to all the Geminis. Also, the last half of June is Cancer season, so happy birthday to all of the June Cancer babies is what I'm trying to say. We still have quite a bit of energy in Taurus starting out the month of June. So we're going to have Jupiter in Taurus over the next year. Jupiter entered Taurus in May. So we just started a new cycle with Jupiter, which is exciting. I'm looking forward to Jupiter in Taurus personally. Mercury is still making its way through Taurus now that it's direct. And so we're going to have Mercury in Taurus until I think June 11th. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more in terms of what that looks like. Uranus is still in Taurus and has been there for a while. That's nothing new, but Uranus and Vesta are making a conjunction on June 1st. Not exact, as we see Vesta is 21 degrees here. Uranus is at 20. So there's kind of a need for maybe some change in terms of our own relationship to our autonomy. Vesta represents the kind of sacred symbology of the Vestal virgins who protected the hearth or the flame, the sacred flame. And so she's connected to our sexuality, sacred sexuality. And the Vestal virgins were also women that a lot of times would become the nuns of protecting the hearth, essentially, so that they could avoid marriage. And so they weren't virgins, but the virgin implied that they weren't married. And so they still actually would have sex. They were having sex with a lot of royalty, like kings would come and have sex with the Vestal virgins. And so a lot of times they would give birth to, babies from the king if I think the queen or, the wife couldn't have a baby. Sometimes the Vestal virgin would have the baby, kind of like a surrogate, I think is how it worked. I might be getting some of that wrong, but that's from what I remember reading about and being taught. So when Vesta is passing in our chart, or wherever Vesta is in our chart, is somewhere that kind of represents this autonomy and this need for like kind of our relationship to our personal sexuality, sacred autonomy, sacred sex, and another kind of variation of wisdom and our own relationship to our sense of selfhood. And with Uranus, Uranus is that planet that represents kind of this need to break free or have some kind of new awareness or change happen. And so we might be feeling some of that need to break free of a structure or an ideology or, something, that has to do with our sexuality or how we experience pleasure or our relationship to the earth, because it's in Taurus, our bodies, that kind of stuff. That might be something that we're experiencing at the beginning of June, where we're looking for some kind of new sense of self in a freeing way. And Jupiter's kind of here telling that story in Taurus as well, because Jupiter is the planet that represents expansion, growth, abundance. And so wherever Jupiter is transiting in our charts, we're experiencing over the next year growth in that area and expansion in that area. And the thing that's hard about Jupiter and Taurus is that Taurus is the sign that really enjoys being kind of locked into something stable, some kind of comfort zone or way that we're kind of trying to build upon something steadily. And Jupiter, being the ruler of Sagittarius and Pisces, is not really about stability. It's not about building comfort so much or stability. It's very much about growing beyond what we've been comfortable with. And so having Uranus in Taurus since I think 2018, I believe that's when Uranus entered Taurus, we've already been in this bubble, having the planet Uranus be, the planet that's about change and disruption and revolution. And, we've already had this push into having to break out of old structures or comfort zones. And now Jupiter's here to help us grow and expand upon the change that's already been initiated since 2018, 2019, that time frame. So there's kind of like another story that might be beginning around some of those changes that have already taken place. So like I said, we're already in the zone where things haven't really felt stable for a while. And Jupiter is here to kind of build upon that. And, we could see it as maybe we are starting to build more stability in a new way, and we're expanding upon whatever that is. But again, where it's hitting in your personal birth chart, what house it's in, will dictate where the growth is happening for you over the next year. And for June, Jupiter is going to be only making its way up to the 9th degree of Taurus. So Jupiter from June 1st will be moving from 3 degrees and then all the way through 9 degrees. So on June 30th, it'll be at 9 degrees Taurus. So that bubble of 6 degrees is going to be where Jupiter's transiting. So if you have anything between those degrees in Taurus, any planets that Jupiter's going to be conjoining with, that'll be very significant for you. Or if it's an aspect to anything that you have within those degrees, at a fixed sign or an earth sign, or it could be making it in conjunct to something. So those are things to kind of be aware of for yourself on a personal level. We also have Venus in Cancer. So Venus entered Cancer at kind of the start of May, and then she's going to be finishing up her cycle in Cancer the first week of June. So she'll actually be entering Leo pretty early on in June, just the same way that she entered Cancer early on in May. So by June 6th, it looks like Venus will be entering Leo and joining Mars in the Leo party. So over here, we've got Venus in Cancer at 26 degrees on the 1st, and Mars is at 7 degrees Leo. Mars is going to be in Leo for the whole month of June. And then once Venus joins the Mars party on the 6th, we're going to have Mars and Venus in Leo together, and they will be making a conjunction later on. So kind of, it looks like. I'm trying to see if there's an exact conjunction. It doesn't look like there's an exact conjunction until maybe August. So yeah, maybe not at all. They get pretty close though. They get pretty close together towards the end of the month. So another energy that we're going to be having is that Saturn is going to be joining the retrograde bubble in June. And so right now, you know, we only have Pluto retrograde. Pluto went retrograde in Aquarius at 0 degrees. And then on June 11th, Pluto is going to station back into Capricorn. So it'll hit 29 degrees of Capricorn on the 11th, the same day that Mercury enters Gemini. And it's going to, Pluto's going to stay retrograde at the 29th degree of Capricorn for the rest of June. So again, that's a critical degree point. So you can look back, like when planets are hitting the same degree that they hit earlier, you can look back and see what was happening during that time in your life to see if there's a repeat theme. So when Jupiter was at 29 degrees Capricorn last, it started on February 12th and lasted until March 24th-ish. And then it's going to be hitting that same area again on June 11th, and that's going to be lasting until July 22nd. So there might be a reoccurring theme from that previous time period that pops back up again in June. So that's something that might be interesting to track or see what happens for you. And then Saturn, that's what I was getting to originally, is going to be stationing retrograde at 7 degrees of Pisces on the 17th. And Saturn's going to be retrograde, it looks like, until November. So we have Saturn retrograde in Pisces for quite a few months. So it's going to go all the way back to 0 degrees of Pisces. So if you have anything between 7 and 0 degrees of Pisces, Saturn will be an aspect to that up through that part of the year. So you know, Saturn retrogrades, we think about what Saturn represents. It represents this desire or need to get something together in life, to solidify something and create structure around something. It also represents slowing down of something, which can feel like a stagnant block. So a lot of times Saturn represents boundaries and blocks because it tends to slow things down. And it's a very, like, the way that Saturn feels to me, I really love Saturn energy. It feels like discipline and slow and steady wins the race, and that you have to follow some kind of structure or rule system in order to successfully really create a foundation in a way that you want. And what's interesting about Saturn and Pisces is that Pisces is not really that type of energy. Pisces is more free and imaginative. There's no boundaries, there's no structure. It's this big, vast void of just anything is possible. And so when we have a planet like Saturn, which tends to be more of the reality check or the structure, the boundary, the rules, the system, kind of this, you know, authority in the world of this is the reality of how it is, in a sign like Pisces, it's like the two kind of merge to be able to kind of create or manifest something that is beyond our wildest dreams. And I think that when Saturn's retrograde, it can feel like we're getting blocked or stagnant or stuck. But in reality, we might have to reflect and review, similar to Mercury retrograde, in order to really make the dream come alive. And so sometimes those retrograde periods help us realize that there's actually more to the puzzle that needs to get done in order for us to be successful. This is a period where our ability to really envision something wild or out there or almost seemingly impossible can actually become a reality. For people that are in recovery, our sobriety can be really tested during this time. Saturn and Pisces can also lend itself to depression or a need to escape in a way that actually results in consequences faster. So Saturn really wants us to take responsibility for what we put out there, what we're doing. And when Saturn, when we're working against Saturn, it kind of comes down like a hammer in terms of the consequences of our actions. So it's really common when Saturn is in Pisces, Pisces rules drugs and alcohol, that the consequences of drugs and alcohol are more likely to rear their head than maybe they had in the past. And that could also be emphasized with a Saturn retrograde, depending on where it's hitting in our charts. I need to take a drink of my juice real quick. I'm feeling really winded today, and I don't know why. I need to remember to breathe in between sentences. Should have done some breathing exercises before I started this. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking kind of about some of the other stuff that's happening early into the month of June. So on June 3rd, so just a couple days into June, a few days. On June 3rd, we're going to have a full moon at 13 degrees of Aquarius. So let's see, where do I have this? It looks like I need to get our time in here a little closer. Almost there. There we go. Close enough for me. It's not, this isn't the exact time, but it's close enough. We can see the moon opposite the sun. So this is our full moon, and it's going to be in the sign of Sagittarius. And so when I do the horoscope videos for each sign, I go into how this full moon is going to impact you on a, on your sun or rising level. But just in terms of us as a collective, Sagittarius is the sign that rules the 9th house. And you'll see in this chart that Mars is hitting in this 9th house energy with Vertex, Pallas Athena, and Black Lilith. And Mars is trining this moon. It's not an exact trine because Mars is at 8 degrees and the moon's at 13 degrees, but it's still within enough of an orb of influence for it to be a trine. And Sagittarius energy ruling the 9th house has to do with our values, our belief systems, and especially when it comes to our spiritual belief systems. It also has to do with our relationship to other cultures, philosophy. Astrology is in the 9th house, and Sagittarius is the seeker of truth, the seeker of wisdom, the seeker of meaning, the seeker of education out in a bigger way, in a vast way. I think a lot of like quantum physics or, spiritual teachers or people that are kind of, searching for life's mysteries. Those are the archetypes of Sagittarius energy, gurus, that kind of stuff, or professors, college professors. And so when we have energy hitting in Sagittarius, what comes up for us a lot of times are those themes. Like, what's my relationship to my spirituality? What's my relationship to the world abroad? What's my relationship to how I'm learning about things? What am I seeking? What do I need? What do I want? And Sagittarius, kind of similar to Pisces, has a really hard time with boundaries and saying no to things and not being in a constant state of seeking more. So it's kind of like if somebody's, really successful in life early on and they get a lot of stuff or a lot of things, you might not see the value in it because it came easily to you. And so you're like, okay, that was great, but what else? What else is out there? The Sagittarius individual tends to constantly be in that state and also is prone to being an addict for that reason, kind of feeling like there's this hole that they're always trying to fill from seeking something from outside themselves. And a lot of Sagittarius people, maybe it starts with stuff or food or alcohol or experiences, like chasing like an adrenaline high. A lot of adrenaline junkies have a lot of Sag placements. And the lesson for Sagittarius is that age-old tale of having to find that true fulfillment from within. And that's where a lot of the spirituality or, like, I think there's a lot of Sag dominant people where even if they're not into a religion or a spirituality, look for it with science even, right? And Gemini is more of the science polarity. In Gemini, we have more of a analytical approach to things, more of a mathematical approach. I'm not saying that if you're a Gemini, that means you like math. It just means that you're looking for information and systems that make sense Sagittarius, it doesn't necessarily need to make sense. It needs to feel meaningful. And with Gemini, it needs to make sense. And so you have in a full moon with Gemini and Sagittarius that dichotomy of this analytical seeking of information, facts and figures, what makes sense, simplified learning, straightforward learning that maybe is still vast and complex, but it's very mathematical. And when I say mathematical, I don't even necessarily mean math. I just mean that it's formulaic. Like there's a X plus X equals X, kind of thing with Gemini. With Sagittarius, it's like there's the quest for that, but the answer is still maybe never quite known. It's like, what happens when we die? That kind of thing. We don't have a Gemini answer for that yet. We don't have this is what happens when we die. Sagittarius is on the quest for that answer and may never get it, but is constantly going to keep looking under every rock or stone and studying where it can find it. And part of the fun for a Sagittarius dominant person is that there is no answer, right? I'm Sag rising, so I'm speaking from experience with this, where I like astrology because the learning with astrology is never ending. And a lot of times when I learn something that's fact-based, I get bored really easily. I'm like, okay, I learned that, on to the next thing, And when it's something that's still very much a mystery, where we're still not sure and we're still trying to study or learn it, it excites me more because I like the fact that there's still so much that we don't know. Even though it's scary and frustrating that we don't know it, the seeking part of it is what's fun for the Sagittarius. So how does this full moon impact you then, knowing that, having that information? So the lunar phase of a full moon is when the sun and the moon are opposite each other. And the reason why the moon is full is because of that, because the sun is illuminating the moon. The moon doesn't glow on its own. The sun is reflecting off the moon, and that's why the moon is glowing. And so when the moon is moving, that's why it makes those different shapes, right? There's different phases of it. And the symbology of the full moon is that something has culminated, something has manifested into being. So when we think about a new moon, we're planting a seed. The new moon in the sky is dark. We can't see the new moon. It's completely dark. There's no moon in the sky. And so the analogy for the new moon is that there's a seed planted in the ground. We haven't seen the plant or the bloom yet. And when the full moon happens, that's an example of the seed having bloomed. Like now it's the flower that's bloomed in the sky. And so the full moon is often associated with manifestation for that reason. New moons are more about setting intentions. They can also represent death because it's the dark moon, the balsamic phase can be kind of significant towards like letting go or ending. And then the full moon has a couple things that happen with it. You'll notice a lot of times in full moons, they talk about manifesting, which is similar to setting intentions like a new moon. But in manifesting, you might be thinking more of something that you want to tangibly manifest, not necessarily something like the new moon. Could be something that you want to tangibly manifest, but it also could be just that you're putting intentions into something that you're probably not going to see the fruition of until later. Full moons also, so you have an ingress towards the full moon where it's culminating, and then once it's in its fullness, then it starts to disseminate. So the 2 days leading up to the full moon are when it's ingressing. The 2 days after, when the full moon hits, or when it begins to start disseminating. And so there's a few different ways you can use that full moon. You can start to manifest while it's ingressing, or you can start to release or let go as it's disseminating. And so it just depends on how you want to use the energy. A lot of people don't think that the timing of when you do certain things matters. I've studied a lot of more dogmatic texts when it comes to using astrology for ritual or for magical practice. And there's a lot of schools of thought that you really want to harness the energy. Like the whole point of this stuff is that there's an energetic influence happening on the planet as a result of this stuff. So to me, it's a little bit pointless to not utilize it the way that it's said to be utilized. But you can do a ritual however you want, whenever you want. I've done it. But I think in order for you to really harness the energy, you would want to utilize it the way that it's being presented. So for this moon, if we're going to look at the manifestation, the other way that we use the moon in ritual is taking advantage of the energies of where the planets are in the sky. It sets the tone or the theme for what it is we want to be focused on. So for the luminaries, the sun and the moon, it's the Gemini Sagittarius axis, which has to do with those themes, the religious, spiritual themes, the seeking themes, the Gemini information gathering themes, our perspectives on life, the way we absorb information. And so it's a really good time to be setting intentions or manifestations towards the things that you're seeking in your life or the information that you're gathering in your life. If you're a teacher, a writer, or a speaker or a student, like focusing on the goals that you have around those things is also really powerful and beneficial. Sagittarius and Gemini also are the signs that rule travel, short distance and long distance travel. So if you have any traveling goals or things that you want to manifest into your life, like working abroad or, you know, having a more fluid job, those are also things that you could focus on manifesting. What are things that we can focus on letting go and releasing when the moon is disseminating? Perspectives, communication dynamics that are no longer serving us. Gemini rules communication. Sagittarius, again, our belief systems and values. And so a lot of times with Sagittarius energy, I'm always telling people, what are your values? What are your beliefs? Are you living in alignment with those beliefs and those values? A lot of people don't. Like, you could ask somebody, do you think that it's wrong for animals to be slaughtered and tortured? I'm a vegan, so I'm bringing up this example. Like, do you think it's wrong for animals to like live in small cages and to be tortured and this and that, whatever? And a lot of people will agree that it's inhumane to do certain things to animals. So they'll say, my belief and my value is that I don't agree or I don't think it's right for these things to be done to animals. So then the next level of the Sagittarius story would be how we put that into action. So, okay, if you believe that this is wrong and that this should not happen, now you can put your money where your mouth is, literally. You know, you can stop buying from these places that are known to do these things to animals, or these places that buy, you know, meat from places that are doing these things to animals. And you could either go vegan, vegetarian, or you could at least be more conscientious of the farms that you're buying your animal products from, right? And usually once you get to that part of the conversation, that's when a lot of people start to back off from what they said, and they don't necessarily want to align their actions with what they said. And so that's kind of the difference in, you know, walking your talk versus, just talking, to talk or say things to sound like a good person. Like, there's a difference between what we perceive as our value in our belief system versus what we actually do in our lives on a regular basis. And so when Sagittarius energy comes up, a lot of times it's asking us questions like that. Are we living a life that is in alignment with what our higher self knows to be right, quote unquote? And of course, there's a lot of arguments that could be made over good and bad, right? Like, our society kind of dictates what in the moment we perceive as good and bad. I mean, you look at 100 years ago and what was perceived as good might not be perceived good now, and vice versa. What perceived as bad might not be bad now, all that kind of stuff. So again, it can also be cultural, which is what Sagittarius also rules, is the culture. So are we in alignment with the culture that we see ourselves being a part of, right? And none of us are perfect. I mean, I bring up a vegan example because those are things that I'm passionate about, but there's plenty of things that I do in my life that are not in alignment always, I think that, like, there was a moment before I went sober where I was getting really into my health, and I was still doing some recreational drug use on the weekends. And I remember getting really high at a after party event and talking about how healthy I was and like all the health stuff that I was doing and working out. And I'm sitting there like doing drugs while I'm talking about this. And it was kind of this like out of body moment where I was like, what the fuck am I doing? How am I talking about being healthy while I'm sitting here doing drugs? Right. It was such a oxymoron, or, kind of like I was full of shit, and it fucked with me. It really, really fucked with me. And during that time, Saturn was in Sagittarius, and it was passing through an area of my chart that was really making me reflect on whether or not I was living the life that I felt most in alignment with. And so this full moon could be about letting go and releasing things that are no longer in alignment with that higher self voice that's telling you, I got to stop doing this. I got to live more in alignment with my values. And it's different for everybody. I'm going to go over where this full moon is hitting in the horoscopes for each sign, sun and rising. So, you know, when you get to reflect on your sign, it'll show where that area of your life is getting highlighted, because it's different for everybody, right? For some of us, it could be our health habits. For others, it could be maybe a group of people we're associating with. It could be an ideology or belief system that we had. It could be a job that we've been in that we're no longer feeling in alignment with. That's kind of what this energy does. So you have an opportunity to want to manifest more of this type of stuff into your life if you're lacking it, or releasing things you're no longer in alignment with. You know, I would love to manifest more people that I'm in alignment with into my social circles. And so that's something that I could set intentions towards manifesting during this full moon. You know, like I would love to have more people that are sober and health focused and, you know, into this kind of stuff in my life. And you know, just kind of those themes are positive to kind of be thinking on. That was a lot about this full moon, but I enjoy talking a lot about the Gemini Sagittarius axis. There's a couple other things, you know, Mars and Leo aspecting this moon. Mars is that energy that really wants to drive things forward. It's assertive, it's aggressive, and Leo, it can be really into creative expression. There also can be an air of pride, you know, and being a little aggressive. So we do need to be mindful. Also having Pallas Athena in Leo too. We also have, let's see here. It looks like Chiron in Aries is kind of, it's so wide, but it's with Pallas Athena. We have a trine happening between Chiron, Pallas Athena, and the moon, this grand trine. And grand trines are considered to be blessings and points of ease. And in this chart, it's happening in the fire houses. So Aries is in the 5th house here. We've got Sagittarius in the 1st and Leo in the 9th. And so again, like values, belief systems, creative expression, and how that reflects to ourselves within our identity and our sense of self is highlighted. And so this is a really great opportunity for us to all as a collective build more confidence around these themes and who we are and how we want to put that out into the world and how we want to express ourselves. Juno and the sun are also in conjunction. It's not a tight conjunction, but again, you know, Juno is the asteroid that represents contractual marriage, and it's in the house in this chart in the 7th house during this day, or this time that the full moon is happening. And so, you know, relationships are highlighted. Are we in alignment with the close personal relationships that we have in our lives right now? That might be something that we're reflecting on. Mercury is going to be in Taurus conjunct Uranus and Vesta. There's a little conjunction going on here too. So again, we were talking about at the beginning of this, Uranus and Vesta, you know, are kind of having this conversation about sacred sexuality and autonomy and like, you know, this need to maybe break free from some structures. And then Mercury coming in represents perspectives, communication, and Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, you know, so Mercury and Jupiter are kind of big themes a little bit in this full moon energy anyways. And Jupiter is still conjunct this north node. So it's going to be an interesting day in terms of, you know, a lot of people might be feeling really restless and feeling like whatever they're just not in alignment with anymore, they're ready to break free from. Like, it's just, you're done and you're ready to move on and you're ready to cut the cords to whatever isn't making sense for you. And it feels very personally empowering with this fire trine that we have going on in the sky. Venus at this point is going to still be at the end of Cancer, 28 degrees Cancer, and she's going to be still making a trine to Neptune, which she made. I think that actually happened a little bit earlier on. So on June 2nd, so the day before this full moon, we had Venus and Neptune making a trine, which is a really positive energy in terms of connecting to ourselves emotionally, being really creative. It enhances a desire to connect to spirituality and art, music. It's a really great placement for artists. This energy too is really great for creatives. It boosts inspiration and creative energy quite a bit. And we also have Ceres in Virgo at 26 degrees, making it in conjunct to Neptune in a semi-sextile. Or no, a sextile, not a semi-sextile, a sextile to Venus too, which enhances a lot of that energy. So yeah, I don't know. I like this full moon energy. I mean, obviously full moons can be really intense for everybody, but I think for me on a personal level, I'm actually really looking forward to it. It's a good self-care day and a good like stay at home and do art day, and kind of just find ways to nurture yourself and express yourself creatively. So let's go ahead and move on. This is going to be a long video, and I would like to talk about some other things that are going on after this. So June 5th, in the ephemeris, it looks like it's June 6th, but it looks like it's going to happen on June 5th. Venus entering, oh, I need to switch that. Venus entering Leo. So we're going to have Venus entering Leo on June 5th, and then she's going to make an opposition to Pluto because we're going to have a Venus at 0 degrees Leo. And let's see here. To get her. Where did she go? She's still at 29. Let's see the time here. It says 6:46 a.m. So I just need to get a little further on. Okay, so here she is making her opposition to Pluto. And so Venus opposite Pluto, Venus is that planet that has a lot to do with our relationships and our connection to the relationships that we're in. And what's interesting is that we had that full moon that had a lot of energy around reflecting on whether or not we're in alignment with certain things in our life. And Pluto is that planet that represents transformation, death and rebirth, and power. And Venus opposite Pluto, especially in the sign of Leo, Venus and Leo I actually really enjoy as a Leo. But opposite Pluto, we could be in that position where if we've had a partnership or relationship, whether it's a business partner or a best friend or romantic partner, we might be ready for there to be some big change or transformation. And we could also have that happen with our relationship to self, having that in Leo. Leo doesn't rule the self, but it rules how we express the self and how we feel about our kind of sexual creative energy. And so we're getting a big enhancement with Venus and Leo for a while. Venus is going to be in Leo for a couple months because she goes retrograde in Leo. So there's a lot of potential for this to hit and for us to feel kind of like, I'm ready for a change. The thing about Venus too is she also represents our connection to how we adorn ourselves and our relationship to beauty. And Leo loves to express itself through acts of self-care and beauty. I'm a Leo, as I've said a million times over, and one of my things called Lady of Leisure, and I'm obsessed with how I express myself visually. So my hair, my makeup, my clothes, my jewelry, the way my home is aesthetically, all of that stuff is really important to me. And I get like emotionally upset if I don't feel in alignment with how I'm expressing myself. And so when we have a Venus transit with a planet that has to do with transformation, we tend to feel kind of this inkling to want to transform something visually, whether it's about ourselves or our environment. So that's also something that you might be feeling during this opposition. Let's see what else we have going on for that week. We've got obviously a lot of transits through June with the moon, but we're not going to talk all about each lunar transit because that's a lot. It looks like our next big transit is Mercury is going to make a sextile to Neptune on the 9th. And so Mercury sextile Neptune, again, with having Neptune in Pisces. So we've got Mercury over here at 27 degrees Taurus. And then we've got Neptune at 27 degrees Pisces. This is such a great energy for musicians. So if you're somebody that likes to write songs or work on music, all of that is enhanced. We have a lot of trine and sextile energy here where we're getting some of those enhancements. Beartex and Sagittarius is trining Mars and Leo and then making that trine up to Chiron. So again, we have a lot of fire trine energy going on. We have a Leo stellium going on in this chart too. We've got a mystic rectangle happening. The moon will be conjunct Saturn. Moon in Pisces is also a very musical energy, poetic energy, self-care, very much enhanced in that way. One of the things about Mercury and Neptune transits is that it enhances our ability to be deceived or to deceive, or illusions get enhanced. Not a great day to be making decisions that require discernment. There's a lot of energy in this chart where we're going to have a hard time being discerning. So, in Juno conjunct the sun, I mean, a wide conjunction, but it's there. So you might benefit from just being creative, or doing something spiritual, connecting with music that makes you happy. There's a lot of really good potential to birth some kind of creative thing. The other thing, though, because it can be a very ungrounded time for us mentally, is I have vertigo right now. I've had vertigo every day since January. So somebody like me that's struggling with vertigo, this is probably going to be another day where that happens. We're going to have to actively work on grounding more intentionally. That's kind of something that we have to really intentionally focus on and pursue. And if you're in recovery, you might feel triggered to want to escape through substances if you're not doing something that connects you to your spiritual creative side. So that's also something to, make sure you have your resources in check, so that if you're feeling kind of like you're swimming out into the ether and getting triggered and wanting to escape through drugs or alcohol, you have your sponsor you can call, or you have your, coping modality that's healthier, because you are inclined to want to escape in ways that might be unhealthy. All right, so we're finally going to move on. We've got a couple more transits, like the sun on the 10th is going to sextile Chiron. So, that's a good opportunity for healing around issues with the identity. So that exact sextile happens in the AM, 12:07 AM Pacific Standard Time. We also have a last quarter moon in Pisces that day. So again, this is a great time to release narratives around what is not serving you in your life, around things that you might be telling yourself. So the sun and Chiron are at 19 degrees, and then the moon is going to be at 17 degrees. I think 19 degrees later that day, because the last quarter moon's happening at 19 degrees. And so again, there's going to be this opportunity for you to let go. Last quarter moons are also kind of like another opportunity to release, let go of things. And so with this sun sextile to Chiron, like insecurities, self-doubt, things that are, getting in your way of really feeling confident about moving forward in your life. And also anything, like any ideas or perspectives that are inhibiting you from feeling into your heart space or following your heart, like getting rid of that jargon. So that's happening on the 10th. And then Sunday, we enter into Mercury going into Gemini, which I'm really happy about. Mercury, right before it enters Gemini, is also going to trine Pluto. And Pluto is going to go back to that 29th degree of Capricorn. And then we have Venus and Leo squaring Jupiter and Taurus. So this is a big day astrologically. You can mark June 11th on your calendar. I would say like June 3rd, with that full moon, is a pretty significant day. And of course, we have a couple of transits that are cool, but June 11th is going to be a pretty intense day, especially since the moon is going to make a conjunction to Neptune and then enter Aries. So we're going to have that Aries lunar energy. I'm not a huge fan of the moon in Aries. It makes people very reactive and more emotionally ungrounded in a way that's very reactive and impulsive, and can be kind of more on the anger spectrum. And so I'm really not a fan of how the moon in Aries affects me or the people around me. And then we have a Venus and Leo square to Jupiter and Taurus. So again, we might be really, I think this energy the day before, where it's like really positive for us to release any kind of perspectives of self-doubt that are like, this would be a good day, like these 2 days, the 10th and the 11th, to do some kind of self-care practice where we write down the narratives that are not serving us and we burn it. And then we write down the things that we want to say instead or put in its place, and start working actively on starting our day out with gratitude exercises, or just, kind of the positive things that we want to say, because it's scientifically proven. There's a lot of spiritual jargon about, toxic positivity and, you know, kind of this other negative side or like privileged side of positive thinking. But there's been actual studies done on how our thoughts affect our health and our reality. And so even though I want to, you know, acknowledge that not everybody's privileged and that some people have privilege working for them that enhances their place in the world, I think that regardless of that, our thoughts have a lot of power in our health and how, you know, we are in life. I think too, it's really important for me to point out that there's a lot of privileged people that materially have a lot and are very miserable people. So I think that for me, I get a little bit annoyed because there's a lot of people in the world that have a lot less, that are a lot happier than a lot of privileged people who have it all, just because of mindset, right? And so it's not about privilege. It's not about position in the world. It's not about how much money or physical stuff that you have. Your reality and the way that you feel about your life really has a lot to do with how you, the relationship you have to yourself. I've been reflecting a lot about that as somebody that has been a seeker, you know, of truth, wisdom, happiness. And I'm a prime example of somebody where I know that I'm really good at manifesting what I want. I know that there's certain privileges I've had in life. I also know that there's certain ones that I haven't had, you know, as a mixed woman that, you know, wasn't born into wealth or anything like that. And I think that from my experience, like, things could be really good in my life, but if my mindset's negative, it doesn't matter, you know, I'm not happy. So that's something that I think we have to remember. And these transits will come up and kind of kick that dust up and remind us, you know, what are we doing about it? What are we doing about the things in our life that we want to expand upon or become more confident in, which that Venus and Leo square Jupiter and Taurus is going to be bringing some of that stuff up. But all of that energy the day before with the sun sextile Chiron, the last quarter moon, is kind of the start of it. Mercury trine Pluto right before it enters Gemini. I'm excited for Mercury in Gemini because Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. Mercury is going to be in Gemini, it looks like, up until the very end of June. So June 28th, it'll enter Cancer. So we have this really short period. It's only 2 weeks and 2 days of Mercury in Gemini, which to me is not enough time. Like, please, I want Mercury in Gemini all like for at least a month or something, but you know, it's a very short time. And so it's a great time to utilize Mercury and its power, you know, so that like I'm going to do my taxes. We put our taxes off and I'm doing our taxes while Mercury is in Gemini because it's just a more supported energy for tech and just, you know, information, putting things together in that way. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, the 11th is going to be a little bit of a tense day. So that's something to keep in mind. So as we move into the next week on the 12th here, we just kind of go through some lunar transits. It looks like on the 13th, we're going to have Venus in conjunct Saturn. So Venus in Leo is going to make a hard aspect to Saturn in Pisces. And as somebody that has a hard aspect between my sun in Leo and my moon in Pisces, I would say that this energy, as somebody that kind of embodies it, is there's a lot of creative tension. And there's a lot of tension between what I want for myself versus what I know is right for me or what my heart knows is more in alignment. Leo rules the heart. Venus rules the heart chakra. And then, you know, the Piscean energy is very much, it's interesting, like having Leo and Pisces so dominant in my chart, I do feel very heart-centered. Like I feel very much like the heart space and what I feel is love and purity and authenticity. Like that's a very strong value system for me, but I'm also Sagittarius rising. So that plays a role in that. And I think that when I'm feeling those kinds of tensions, it's like there's a Leo side of me that's very egoic and prideful, but the softer Piscean empathic side of me prevents me from being able to fully go as far into the negative Leo traits that I might go into if I didn't have that Pisces energy there kind of reminding me to be more compassionate or empathic. So I think that there's this tension, with Venus and Leo, Saturn and Pisces, where we might be feeling that. We might be feeling like this is what I want and this is who I am. And then we might have to be reminded, but what's good for the collective, or what's good for everybody, or what's good for myself on a deeper level might be different. And so those are things that we might be feeling over the few days that we're feeling this transit. The next main transit happening is going to be on June 15th, where we have, let me make sure that I'm not missing a moon yet. No, I'm not. That happens in a couple days. So June 15th, we're going to have Mercury squaring Saturn. So, a lot of times when Mercury is not retrograde, we'll have days that feel like it is. And that's usually because Mercury is making some kind of transit that's hard or tense or not the best. And when that happens, similar things can happen where there's miscommunication, tension around communication, things going a little haywire. And so the 15th, June 15th, is going to be one of those days with Mercury squaring Saturn. And it's immutable energy, which makes it feel very, it's like a dysregulated nervous system, kind of misunderstandings, miscommunications, feeling like what you're trying to get across isn't coming clearly. I feel like that's going on today for me personally. That, why I feel that way, actually? My Neptune is trining Mercury, or I should say Mercury in the sky is trining my Neptune right now. So I'm experiencing a Mercury-Neptune transit right now. And I'm bringing Neptune up because Neptune's the ruler of Pisces. And then this one is Mercury and Taurus squaring Mercury and Gemini squaring Saturn and Pisces. So it's kind of a similar energy just because of the Piscean influence there. So it can feel really ungrounding. We're going to have a new moon in Gemini on the 17th. So if we go forward a couple more days and then that happens, let's see here. So it hits on the 17th in Pacific time and it hits on the 18th for Eastern time. And Father's Day is going to be on the 18th. So we'll have a new moon on Father's Day. We'll be feeling that energy those 2 days. So on the 17th, it looks like it happens at 9:37 p.m. So let's get all the way closer to that time frame. May as well get as close as possible since I'm here. Okay, so this is our new moon chart. So we've got the moon conjunct the sun in Gemini, and then we still have Mercury in Gemini, but Mercury is not a part of that conjunction. But what is Juno. So Juno was playing a part during the full moon. And so we were talking about how, we might be reflecting on some of our relationships and, what, our relationship is, if it's in alignment with where we're going, that kind of stuff. And then we have kind of like a similar, reflective period going on here again, where, Juno is contractual partnership. So like a marriage or somebody that we're in contract with. And so again, we might be in this position of reflecting and kind of thinking about what we want to set intentions towards around those types of relationships. We also have Venus and Mars pretty close together. They're not, exactly conjunct, but they're pretty close together in Leo. And we have Lilith in Leo and Pallas Athena in Leo and Vertex in Leo. So we got quite a lot of Leo energy. And then it's interesting because Vertex is at 26 degrees. So it's at the same degree point, making a sextile to our moon, our new moon energy. And Vertex is not a planet or a celestial body. It's an energetic point that's similar to the North Node, but what it represents is destiny or fate that usually is brought on by other people, which is also interesting having Juno in the mix, because Juno usually represents a partner in our lives or some kind of partnership dynamic. And so it's just interesting. I don't really know exactly what it's going to mean, but it seems like the influence of other people is strong in this new moon, and that we're learning something through somebody else during this new moon that might bring some kind of epiphany or awareness to us, and that it's destined. It's destiny. So that's something that is interesting to me. Vesta is at 28 degrees of Taurus and also making an aspect to that Vertex. They're squaring each other. So that's an influence happening. And then we have the 29-degree Pluto kind of playing a role. I think it might be making it in conjunct to Gemini and also to the Leo Vertex. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't really know how I feel about the Pluto energy. It's not exact, but it is within that 3-degree orb of influence. So those are the main, oh, and then we have Neptune. I can't forget about Neptune. Neptune is actually squaring this new moon. So again, having a Neptune square to a Gemini new moon, that's pretty intense. I mean, I think that it's a very dysregulated energy again, like dysregulation of the nervous system and feeling maybe some anxiety or some emotional stuff coming up. New moons can be very emotional, you know, like they're a time where we really want to retreat and go within and get some space and reflect on something that we're going through. So again, like relationships with people come up, what our needs are in a relationship comes up, what our beliefs or perspectives are. Beliefs aren't quite as much of a theme in this chart as just perspectives and even communication styles, like how we communicate with our partner or people that we're close with. And, you know, Mercury and Venus are making a sextile to each other pretty, I mean, it's 11 degrees. So we have a Venus at 11 degrees and Mercury at 11 degrees. And so this is also an opportunity for positivity around communication, healing around communication. Mars is still kind of in the mix though. So there might be a little bit of challenges, but there's, you know, Venus, I think of as resolution. So Mars will kind of activate maybe a challenge or something that really needs to be kind of asserted. And then Venus comes in and wants to harmonize and resolve and heal and, you know, kind of make something more positive or feel good. So there's opportunity during this new moon to need to work something out and for there to be resolution and healing around it. And, you know, I do think having the Vertex Juno combination means that it is going to have to do with other people, somebody close to you. But, you know, this could be you. It could be a relationship to yourself too. It just depends on where, again, it always depends on where it's hitting in your personal chart. This is just super general. The next day when it hits on the East Coast, exactly, we also are going to have the sun squaring Neptune. So that's already kind of happening though with the new moon. So we already talked about that square. And then the moon will be in Cancer later on in the day. The 19th, Jupiter is going to be sextiling Saturn. So again, this is a really positive energy for creative projects, manifesting things into the physical that you want, especially if it's art or music related. Also, you have to be kind of careful with Jupiter and Taurus sextiling Saturn and Pisces when it comes to money or finances. You might be more prone to wanting to spend a lot or be extravagant in that way, for better or worse. So that's something to be mindful of. And then this is a week where we are actually entering Cancer season. So if we go to the 21st, we are now at the summer solstice. It's also the I believe Celtic, I might be getting this wrong, but Litha. And then we have a few transits going on this day. We have, before the sun enters Cancer, the sun is going to make an inconjunct to Pluto. And then once the sun enters Cancer at 7:58 a.m. Pacific time, we're going to have Mercury sextiling Mars in Leo and Mercury sextiling Chiron in Aries. And so sextiles are really harmonious energies. And so we might get a boost of energy this day in terms of wanting to do something that feels good to us, wanting to be out in the world, have fun. You know, I'm automatically thinking like, I'm going to wish that I was at a pool this day. Probably I'm going to want to go to a pool party. Like need to plan on the summer solstice going to a pool. Let's see. And we've got so much energy in Leo hitting here. The moon is also going to be in Leo this day, sandwiched, you know, between Mars and Venus and Lilith here. I tend to have a hard time when the moon is in Leo personally. But you know, again, there's so much positive creative energy going on in the sky that I think if you're utilizing it in that way of really like kind of fulfilling your soul needs, it should be positive. Trying to think if there's anything else I really want to talk about with this, but I think I'm pretty good. We're going to have on the 25th of June, Mercury squaring Neptune. So I was kind of talking about that energy with a different transit. I think it was the new moon was squaring Neptune. So again, all of this kind of energy squaring Neptune is very dysregulating, but it also lends to creative inspiration. So again, Mercury, our planet of communication, Neptune, our planet that kind of represents escapism, spirituality. We have an opportunity to really do something productive or drown in the sea of despair. So it's really up to you. I've been really wanting to start painting again. I did a couple of paintings and got really excited and into it. And then I got really busy and then I just haven't had a chance to get back to it. But, you know, for somebody like me that's kind of exploring these other modalities of art, this is a positive energy for that. There might be a little bit of frustration around it though, having it be a square. Squares are tense aspects that bring, you know, kind of some frustration into the mix a little bit. I guess too, I missed on the 22nd that there is going to be a Mars trine to Chiron in Leo. So that day, you know, we could be feeling a little spicy. Mars in Leo, trining Chiron in Aries. We could feel a little reactive. We could take things a little bit personally, but we could also feel really motivated to work on something that we've been wanting to do. So, you know, it's all about how we apply it and how we utilize the energy. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the last week of June. So 26th is our beginning of the last week. We have a first quarter moon in Libra. So the moon will be squaring the sun in Cancer. Mars is also going to be squaring, it looks like, Uranus. So we're going to have a fixed square and a cardinal square emphasis. And then we're going to have Mercury making one last aspect to Pluto and in conjunct before Mercury joins the Cancer party. So the 26th is another one of those days to mark in your calendar. First quarter moons are kind of like they happen right after the new moon. And so it's one of the, not right after, a week after the new moon. And so it's one of those things that we have another opportunity to kind of set an intention or plant a seed towards something. And it's in Libra, and Libra, you know, has a lot to do with how we feel in harmony in life. Like, do we feel like we're in balance or harmony? And squaring the sun in Cancer. Cancer has to do with self-care, emotions, like how we feel our relationship to family is going and all of that kind of stuff. And so we might be reflecting on those themes. Mars squaring Uranus is pretty volatile, and there's a lot of room for accidents and hurting yourself on this day. So I would say June 26th is a great day to focus on active self-care and stay home. Like, be careful on the road. Be careful with your personal interactions. You could easily hurt somebody's feelings or piss them off. People are going to be a little sensitive. And then you have Mercury entering Cancer at 5:24 p.m. Pacific time. And it's like that emotional energy and ability to take things personally gets enhanced. So yeah, it's the evening especially is a good day to just kind of hunker in and avoid people. Our next big transit happens on Wednesday, the 28th of the month, where we have the sun making a trine to Saturn. And, you know, this is a water trine. So we've got, you know, the sun Cancer trining Saturn and Pisces, and Saturn, I believe, will be retrograde by this point. Yeah, Saturn stations retrograde on June 16th. So, you know, we might be in a period where we're feeling really like we need some downtime, and maybe we've been really social and creative and, you know, active for most of June, and now it's the energy's kind of starting to work more into this space of wanting to just slow it down and focus on restoring ourselves. I think of kind of the Ace of Cups energy in the tarot, where it's about kind of like taking initiative in emotional health and self-care, spiritual self-care, spiritual health. There's still a boost of creative energy that could come through. This is the Ace of Cups in the Mother Peace deck, where the woman is diving into the cup of water. And I just see it as very much like active self-care, taking care of yourself. So that's an energy that I think of on the 28th. And then Thursday, the next day, we have Venus making a trine to, no, I went too far. Venus will be trining, no, I'm sorry, I was right, the 29th. Venus will be trining Chiron. So again, this is an opportunity to heal maybe any wounds around the self. Venus and Leo trining Chiron and Aries. So Chiron is that wounded healer. It represents, you know, a wound that we're carrying in Aries that has to do with identity. Venus and Leo is all about self-expression, romance, confidence, performance, connecting to our inner child, connecting to joy, having fun. So this is a really positive time to ask yourself, what does that mean to you? What is joy to you? What is self-expression to you? And healing maybe any insecurities that you might have around confidence or creative self-expression. And Mars, is still pretty close to Venus, and Pallas Athene. So there's a desire and a need to really push past our insecurities and do things that help us feel more confident in our lives. Also on this same day, we're going to have in Pacific time, Mercury trining Saturn in Pisces. So Mercury in Cancer trining Saturn in Pisces. I just think this day is such a great day to do something fun and creative that fulfills your heart, like fulfills your heart space. I just think like if you play music or write music or love listening to music or love dancing or love painting or love writing, like anything that kind of gets you in touch with that side of yourself is going to be a really positive way to spend these few days where we have this energy in the sky. The last day of June, June 30th, Neptune actually stations retrograde at 27 degrees of Pisces. So Neptune joins the retrograde party. And, that Mercury trine to Saturn will hit in the East Coast. And then we also are going to have Mercury conjunct the sun, which is called a cazimi. And I personally really enjoy Mercury conjunct the sun, but in Cancer, we might be feeling a little extra sensitive and emotional, and like we need to take a time out and just focus on rejuvenating and restoring. Anytime there's a lot of Cancer energy, whether it's the moon in Cancer or planets in Cancer, I just really want to be at home and do a face mask and watch crappy reality shows. And like my version of like having a spa day at home and doing some kind of self-care ritual. So the last day of June, Friday the 30th, is actually going to be a really good day to do whatever version that is for yourself, or hang out in a pool, go to a hot tub, whatever you need to kind of feel like you're taking care of yourself is, a good way to spend the end of June. I don't think I have a lot more to add. I'm enjoying kind of following the ephemeris and my Llewellyn astrology planner in terms of it keeping me on track and going over each transit for the month, because then I don't have to spend as much time going over each little transit in the horoscopes, because then each horoscope video would be an hour and I just don't have time for that. So, well, that's not true. I do have time for that. I just don't want to spend an hour on each horoscope. I don't think you even listen to the full hour that I do these things, but if you do, I appreciate it. That is June. June, if I were to summarize what we just talked about, great month for creativity, great month for self-expression, redefining what self-expression means to you, asking yourself if you're in alignment with the people you surround yourself with, and, really finding a way to connect to more joy and self-care practices that fulfill you and connect you with your heart space, which I think is good advice no matter what's happening in the sky, but we really get a boost of that in the month of June. I'm excited. I personally just want to hang out at a pool all day and wear cute clothes. That's what I want to do, and start painting again. Those are my goals for June, I think. Yeah. All right, you guys. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like, subscribe. If you want to get notifications, I'll have the rest of the horoscopes posted throughout the next week. I'm going to just kind of start letting them go. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave one. And I look forward to seeing you all next month.